here we go. We're talking about the big one. This is a video that was requested by several of you actually, but someone in particular. We're talking about gay age differences, aging in the gay community, perceptions of age. I have no idea how I'm gonna title this video, but we're talking about age and being gay. So I am currently 26 years old. And to some of you, that is gonna be very young. Oh my gosh, he's so young. Like he's just starting his whole journey, blah, 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 blah. To some of you, that is gonna seem so old, which is bizarre. Some of you are gonna be like, oh my gosh, he's 26. Like that is so old. First of all, you're wrong, but anyway, moving on. Age perception in the gay community. Now, I've done a lot of TikToks. I've done a lot of talking with people about this topic. This is probably one of, if not the most contentious subject inside the gay community. I'm gonna stipulate that it's actually the most contentious thing in the like gay man community, like in the lesbian and bisexual and transgender community. There are other discussions going on that are probably a lot more important, but for some reason, gay men are obsessed with age. Age is something that is either, you know, I like him young, I like him really old, I like daddies, I like super, you know, this age or that age. Age is this incredibly controversial topic in the gay community. And I am going to just talk about the gay men in the community. So when I'm talking about gay today, it's mostly gonna be gay men because that's my experience. I myself am bisexual. I've dated girls, I've dated guys, I've done, you know, that kind of thing. But my experience with gay men is that age is really important and it leads to a lot of prejudice. It leads to a lot of discrimination. It leads to a lot of broken hearts and difficult relationships. So I've made videos about gay age gaps before on TikTok. They almost always get full of comments and comment sections because this is something we all deeply care about. And yeah, we're gonna see how far we can get into it. Might be kind of a big video. First of all, I have been in several relationships, and my relationships have always been with guys who were a bit younger. I've dated girls who are older than me, but I've dated guys who are pretty much all younger than me by at least 3 years, I think. Usually they're younger than me. I have been involved with older gay men, basically like my whole life. But my like long-term relationships have been with younger gay men. And I mean, they haven't worked out, so who knows? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying that is my personal experience. So yeah. Okay, first of all, where do I want to start with this? Okay, first of all, I think we're gonna start with when you first come out as gay or you realize that you're gay and you're in the closet, you have this perception, or at least I had this perception, that really like there weren't a lot of like older gay men, especially around where I lived. Like I lived in a university suburb of a big city. And so 9 times out of 10, when I was interacting with another gay person, it was someone very close to my age. I came out at 21, so I didn't have this like young gay man experience or like being like a gay teenager. I didn't really experience any of that because I didn't know I was gay, or bisexual, I guess. But yeah, so my experience early on was not with any older gay men of any kind, shape, or form. So my perception of them was kind of shaped by the people I was around. And I would say that younger gay men tend to dislike and have an aversion towards older gay men. There are some that exclusively just want to date like older gay men. Like there are young guys who are my age who exclusively only date like 45 plus year old gay men. but I think they are the exception. I think typically the like quote unquote desirability, like the people at the top of the pyramid are young gay men. And I think it has been like that for quite a while. Like there is just this thing about young gay men. They are talked about and romanticized and fantasized about. And so being a young gay man, you're kind of at the top of the hierarchy, and like you're at the top of the hierarchy. Like it's not this like oh ho ho like I didn't know. It's like you're at the top. You can get whoever you want. And most gay men's response to that is this ego boost because they have lived in a society where they are less than, and so they finally like fit the top of the pyramid. They're the apex predator or whatever, and they become real dicks about it. And so you get a lot of younger gay men who are absolutely jerks, and they're really rude, very prejudiced. They tell it like it is. They're being honest. They don't want some old gross guy. And so they're just like very discriminatory, and they're really not the vibe. They're kind of disgusting themselves because they just have such a distaste for older gay men. And it's not even like a combination of things. It's just like they don't like age. They are really like I think they're probably quite scared to get older. Aging in the gay community is something that is like really taboo. It's really disliked. I think part of it probably has to go back to the AIDS epidemic where we lost so many gay men. So the older gay men, there's a lot less of them. There is a lot less of them than there are young gay men, because so many of them died in the AIDS epidemic. And many of them are still closeted. Some of them are just like in relationships, they're in long-term relationships. They're not, they're living their lives, they're doing their best. And so they're not visible in our community. And so the gay community has really been like mentorless. Like we haven't had mentors. Like nobody like teaches you really how to be gay. Nobody like explains like, oh, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. There are influencers and there are people online who talk about their experiences and stuff, which is great. It's how I learned that I was bisexual, is I was listening to other gay guys talk about their experience. And then I was like, oh man, maybe that's me. So we're kind of like a little bit mentorless in this community because we just don't have the older gay men with their experience and wisdom. And I think even if we did, young gay men wouldn't listen to them anyway. Like I think young gay men are pretty egotistical. They obviously, like, there are some that are really level-headed and humble and down to earth, and they're very grounded. But I think the vast majority of them are very centered on themselves, on looking good, being fit, going to the gym, doing all the stereotypical like gay men things. But they're missing this like core element of like generational wisdom. And I mean, that is why societies are really successful, is because humans can pass on knowledge from one individual to the next. It's why I'm sitting in a like beautiful kitchen, is because humans are one of the few animals that have learned that we can like pass knowledge down so that the next generation is better than the previous. And we can write things, we can leave videos, we can pass knowledge down in an infinite number of ways that can allow the next generation to figure things out. Whereas like a deer can teach its child like, oh, like look out for this, and if you see these trees rattling, like to move here. But it can't pass down any knowledge of like, this is how you make a spear to stab the bear that's gonna try and eat you. Like a deer doesn't do that, Whereas a human, we can like, yeah, this is how you make a spear. And then, when the lion comes for you, you can stab it, and then you've got dinner for the next week or whatever. Like humans, we are like on this exponential growth curve. And the reason we're successful is because we listen to the older generation. We listen to our parents, and we take their knowledge. We don't always take it like 100%, take it with a grain of salt, but we move on. And the gay community, we're really bad at doing that. We are really bad at understanding just how bad, like I have no experience with the AIDS community. I never lost somebody I knew to AIDS or HIV. I have no experience with that. I'm sure it was probably completely traumatic and it changed your life and you lost amazing people who were incredible lights in this world, but I have no experience of it. And so that creates kind of a disconnect between my generation and the generation of gay men who came before me. because there's a lot fewer of them, and I don't identify with them. And also our culture and our technology has changed so much that a lot of gay men are like, well, what can an older gay man teach me? Like, they don't know social media. They don't know what it's like coming out in 2023. Like, like it's a different culture. It's a different world. And like, there is some truth to that. But at the end of the day, like, wisdom is wisdom, and wisdom can be applied anywhere, and it can be found anywhere. So I think that's the first part of this whole like gay age thing, is the young men's perception of the older men. There's also like obviously the perception that older gay men have of younger gay men. So like I think older gay men look at people like me, and I've had comments of older gay men like on my videos basically being like, you don't understand anything, like my life was way harder than yours. Okay, it might have been, but we don't say that. Like in our day in lives, like you don't get to tell me that my life is harder or easier than yours, because you don't know my life. And so you do get this perception of older gay men who think that they know the best, and that you're just some stupid kid who doesn't understand anything, and when you get older, you'll understand. Let's drop the ego at the door, okay? I recognize my own insecurities and my own flaws. I don't need you pointing them out, and I don't need some know-it-all person in my life, regardless of like whether they're a parental figure, whether they're an older gay person. I don't need you like talking down to me, and I won't accept that. And so I think a lot of older gay men think that it's appropriate to basically talk down to younger gay men. And so like you have issues on both sides is what I'm trying to say. Like I'm not trying to be egotistical. I'm not trying to like bash younger gay men. I'm not trying to bash older gay men. I'm just pointing out some of the issues that cause contention in our community. I don't like saying our community. I think that sounds too airy-fairy, but it is our community. It is a group of people who feel the same way and have the same kinds of struggles and issues. So I think that's the problems with both younger and older gay men, and some of the issues that we have and how we kind of clash a little bit, which is a shame, because I think the community as a whole could be so incredibly positive and supportive and helpful, and it could prevent all kinds of issues, and it could just promote happiness, which I think, we can achieve. I think that is absolutely possible, but it requires both sides to just drop some ego and just realize that both sides have stuff to teach, and both sides have experience that is both valid and really important. So that's some of the intricacies of like perception, I guess, is what we're gonna label that. Now, one of the people that recommended that I talk about this asked about age differences in dating. So we're going to have a little tangent here, and then we will swing back around to the wider topic again. So this person said that they are 30 years old and that they are dating a 60-year-old. And they wanted me to just, what were my thoughts, what were my opinions on dating age gaps. Now, I've made videos about this before, so you can pull them up, and like, honestly, I can't even really remember what I said. One of them was very satirical, and I was sort of like, it just doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. One of them, I was sort of diving deeper into it. So feel free to pull them up. You can like blast me for them, like whatever. My views on this have changed quite recently. So if you want to pull up my previous TikTok videos, like go ahead. But my opinion on age gaps is, I think it can absolutely work. I have talked to many people who are in very successful relationships with age gaps. And I think that's awesome. Whether you are gay or straight, I think being in a relationship with somebody who is a vastly different age than you, I think it can absolutely work. Okay? So I've said that. And I genuinely believe that. However, I think age gaps can prove to be an obstacle in a relationship. Just like how I live in the middle of nowhere, that is an obstacle to me being able to date and long-term be in a relationship with somebody. I think an age gap can be a real obstacle. It can be a super positive thing in your direction, but in my view, I think because of everything I've just said about age gaps and how there are these different perceptions, we have grown up in different cultures. The perception of gay people has dramatically changed even in the last 15 years. I think age gaps can be a real problem because I have talked to many older gay men who have a huge amount of internalized homophobia because they grew up in a culture that was not positive and helpful to them. And so they have a lot of distaste and dislike towards gay culture as it is now, where it is out and proud and it is very loud and it is very sort of like overt. It isn't covert. We aren't hiding anymore. Um, and so the older gay men that I have met, specifically in my area, which is like a rural part of Canada, um, tend to be kind of too much, they're too homophobic for me. You know, I've been on dates with older gay men in their 30s and 40s, and I will say something about a drag race or like going to brunch with my friends, and they're just like, why are you acting so gay? Like, why are you being a stereotype? And I'm like, I'm not being a stereotype. I like brunch and drag is really cool. And they just can't accept that. They're just like, no, that's too gay. That's gross. Like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be a gross little gay guy like that. And I'm just like, whoa, that's a lot to unpack there. And there isn't a second date after that, to be very frank. So that's like my own issues with age gaps, but I have seen age gaps work amazing. You know, 30 years difference and it just clicks into place and it works great. That's awesome. You know, I don't think I'm mature enough in many ways to be able to like deconstruct an older person's like homophobia and to like analyze it. So I'm not gonna try and like speak for that kind of thing. But my opinion on age gaps, absolutely they work. Absolutely you can make it work, totally. But just like in any relationship, you need good communication, a solid basis of understanding. You find both of you like find each other very attractive. You know, there are just some like basic things that need to work, and then you're off to the races. And like, I wish you all the best. And invite me to the wedding. Who knows? Maybe I'll meet somebody there. So that's kind of like my like little view on gay age gaps and dating and that kind of stuff. So now we're gonna swing back around. So we talked about the sort of the perceptions that young gay men and old gay men have on each other and like what they think about each other. But something I kind of wanted to address was like the idea of aging in the gay community, because this is something that people are so obsessed with. And like, I'm fortunate that I really just don't care, but the idea of aging as a gay man is incredible. And even from the time that I came out as gay at 20 or 21 years old to now, the perception people have of me has changed quite a bit. I'm still getting like the compliments occasionally where it's like, oh, I thought you were 22 or something. And I'm like, damn, thank you. That feels good. That feels good. And it feels good because of my perceived notions of aging, which are wrong, but it's fine. So when I first came out, like I said at the beginning, like there's this perception that young gay men, especially if you're like white and privileged, are kind of at this top of the hierarchy. And like they are, like I was definitely there. And like to a degree, I still very much am. You know, I am a white gay man who is masculine presenting. And so in many people's views, like I am at the absolute top of the hierarchy of gay men, you know? People of color are considered less. There's all this discrimination. You know, so like there is like for a group of people, like the gay community, for a group of people who are constantly facing prejudice and difficulty and struggle, we create our own hierarchies that fuck us up just as much as anyone else. And yeah, being at that pinnacle, like being a young gay white man with privilege, going to university, like having money, like all these things, you absolutely begin to see the world in a certain way. And it's kind of like, it's very toxic, but yeah, it's difficult. And so then when you add the element of aging onto it, it becomes even more complex. And like my premise isn't life is complex. My premise is that it is very interesting to deal with aging in a gay community, especially when there's like hierarchies on hierarchies. So, you know, like there's like white men are at the top. Young people are also at the top. Well, people who are affluent are at the top. It's like, oh, so young, white, affluent men are at the very top. You know, so it's like this, what was the term? I remember reading, her name's Dr. Kimberly, and she did a book on, I forget the name of it. Leave it in the comments, but it's like the idea of having two different elements of discrimination put together that affect you harder than, say, somebody like so I'm gay and a man, but a gay woman deals with things that I don't even understand, right? Like deals with the sexism and the patriarchy and things like that that I have never even had to like deal with. Is it intersectionality? Intersectionality. There we go. I forget the name, I forget her last name, but Dr. Kimberly, she's sort of the professor who came up with this idea of intersectionality, where you can have different elements that affect you on different ways. And it's an interesting topic. You can look into it if you're interested. But as a gay man, I have noticed as I've gotten older that the perception, sorry, I have to move this. The perception of me has changed as I've gotten older. So when I was like 20, I could literally like talk to any gay guy, like 18 and above. Sorry, I had to let the dog out. Come on, outside. No, you don't get to sit there. Come on, Lily. Good girl. She wants me to open the door and then just like, so she can just like sit out there and just smell it. She doesn't actually want to go outside. And I'm like, no, you can't have it both ways. But I can. Okay, sorry. I've noticed that as I've gotten older, the perception of me has changed. So before, I could message any guy and be like, hey, you want to hang out? And they'd be like, yeah, absolutely. And now there are men who are like, oh, I'm sorry, like I don't date older men. And I'm like, what? Like I'm 26 years old and now I'm considered older by some. Interesting. And you have people who say like, oh, like 25 and under, like I'm only interested in 25 and under. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? And now you have like these OnlyFans people who are 18 years old and like they're exclusively like at the very top of the chain or whatever because they're 18, like they're just like, which is kind of creepy when you think about it. When you really like dive into this, it's a very like creepy concept and it's very weird. But I've noticed the change, you know, there have been people that I have like talked to or messaged that are like, oh, you're 26? Oh, okay, sorry, I'm not interested. And it's like, what? Like, that is so interesting. Like the ageism starts so quick. And I'm sure it only ramps up after you're 30 and then you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. So that's incredible. And then I think gay men's not exclusively, but specifically gay men are terrified of growing older. They are terrified of aging. And it's interesting. It's probably worse. I think gay men have this fear of aging that is worse than women, because I think women are like, I've got a bunch of girlfriends who are absolutely terrified of turning 30 and like I couldn't care less. But I think most gay men are even more obsessed with aging. And I think it's one of the reasons why gay men, I think it's one of the reasons why many gay men are obsessed with going to the gym, eating healthy, like yoga, spin class, like we do all of these things, hair care, skin care. There are a lot of these things that gay men do and obsess over, specifically because they are really afraid of aging and they're really afraid of growing old. And so they're gonna do everything they can to be as young as possible and even engage in like things that young people would engage in just because they want to look young. I remember going on a date with a 32-year-old once, and first of all, I thought he was 22, but his his dating pictures were all from 10 years ago. So then I showed up and nope, he was 32. So he had like straight up lied about his age and just like hidden the fact. And so I was like, oh, like, how old are you? Just by question. He's like, oh, I'm 32. I'm like, oh, like, when were your pictures taken? Because like this man had aged 10 years in his pictures. Also, little tip, don't lie about your age. Don't catfish. Don't do any of that stuff. Like, that was one of the worst dates of my life. But he had actively lied about it. And then he proceeded to tell me of all the young and cool hip things he was doing and how he was doing this and that. And he was so young and full of energy and blah, 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 blah. And like, I could just like tell that he was absolutely terrified that he had gotten old, which I think is really sad because you should embrace your age, whatever you are, you know? There are so many like great examples of people who have aged gracefully and beautifully. And there's nothing wrong with getting older. And if you embrace your age, that's kind of the sexiest thing you could do. It's the best thing you could do. It's the most attractive thing you can do. And I'm not saying you have to do it because you want to be attractive. I'm saying you should do it because you should love who you are and the age you are and what you're doing. But don't be fake. Don't lie. Don't like misinform. Don't get bitter. Because like age comes for us all, you know? I've had so many comments of people being like, well, your hair's gonna fall out one day and you're gonna be ugly. Maybe my hair will fall out one day, but I'm promising you I will never be ugly because ugly is a characteristic that is either assigned to you or you assign it to yourself. And I would never call myself ugly. Like even if all my hair fell out, I had to do chemo or something, or I just got older and I got wrinkles and I look gross, like I would never call myself ugly because I'm not. I know I'm a beautiful human and I don't prescribe or subscribe to any of that kind of stuff. So I think like age is very much a perception. Age is just a number and you don't let it have to define you. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I have met 18-year-olds who are incredibly mature, who have their entire life figured out, who are working so hard, who have an amazing relationship with their friends and family. I have met 18-year-olds who are driven and have mortgages and 3 jobs and know exactly where they're gonna go and are preparing to retire at 30. I know 18-year-olds who are just on the ball. They understand what they're doing here and they make the world a better place. I also know 18-year-olds who are absolutely ridiculous, live in their parents' basement, totally vibe, chill, no job, no college, not interested, just want to have a good time. Cool. I have met 30 and 50-year-olds who are incredibly mature, can talk philosophy, can quote Sartre and like Proust. They are just absolutely with it. They know what they're doing. They have their life together. They have great relationships. I have also met 30 and 50-year-olds who are absolutely ridiculous, who are completely, wild and spontaneous and have their life not together at all. And some of them travel the world, some of them do ridiculous things. So at the end of the day, age really doesn't matter in terms of maturity, responsibility, wisdom. Okay? I know this is controversial, but I'm gonna say it. Older people are not wise because they're older. Older people are wise because they have experience and they've understood it. That is not to say that an 18-year-old cannot be wise. I have met a lot of very wise people who are under the age of 20, and they're very wise. They see life in an incredibly unique and beautiful way. So age really doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, I think that is like the biggest takeaway that I can probably give you in these 29 minutes of me talking about this. If you're still here, I'm so thankful that you're here and thank you so much for listening. I hope I haven't like burnt your ears out, but that's the big takeaway, is that age is irrelevant in most situations. And when you really come down to it, the important thing is actually just being a human being with compassion and kindness, willing to see things from other people's perspectives, willing to listen instead of talk first, and just trying to live a good life and help others live a good life. Because at the end of the day, That's all that matters, is just happiness and the pursuit of happiness. So if you want to ask me what my opinion is on gay age gaps, it absolutely works. If you can communicate in any good relationship, if you can have time for each other and compassion and make space for each other, there is absolutely no problem in age. When it comes to age and the fear of aging, what I will tell you is you are never as old as you think you are. Age is just a number. Never feel like you should be afraid of aging, because there's nothing wrong with aging. It just means you're at a different part of the life cycle, and it doesn't matter if you're 92 or if you're 12, if you're 35, you still have so much life to live. You still have so much life to live, sorry, my throat is dry. You still have so much life to live. You still have an incredible future ahead of you. And if somebody is willing to discriminate against you because of age, they aren't worthy of being in your life. And that is the biggest takeaway, is that if someone's like, ew, he's 26, I don't want to hang out with that person. That person sounds like a dick. And I'm not interested in that. Well, I'm interested in, you know what I mean. Sorry. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please share your comments about aging, and the perceptions of it, and dealing with different age gaps in relationships. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna end it here. Thank you for being you. Have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.